What's going on, guys? So I reached level 25 on my rogue in beta, and I wanted to share my shadow flurry build with you guys. I wanted to go melee to start, and it's worked out really well. So starting off with the stats, and then I'll go into the gear, and then the skills, and then rotation of skills that I use, and how I try to kill enemies as quickly as possible. So starting off, I'm using daggers, so you have the weapon speed of 1.2, and this is important for energy regeneration. Critical strike chance is what I'm trying to focus on my gear, to get as many critical strikes as possible, because I'll go into that in a second when I go over the skills. And they synergize pretty well, and then obviously critical strike damage is important as well. Damage versus close, if you can get it, it's not a priority for me. I'm really focused on the critical strike right now, but we'll see as the game advances and I get higher levels once the game releases. So that's the main one, and then anything else I can get with core skills, because basically the core skill I'm using is FLURRY. So anything with core skills I can try to increase as well if I find that gear. Now this one is like probably second, or actually it's maybe even tied for first for priority, is life on kill. So this build focuses on killing enemies in groups as quickly as possible, and being that you're in melee range, you're going to be taking a decent amount of damage. So life on kill is important, and I try to find gear that has other stats as well as life on kill, such as this helm 6 life on kill. And then movement speed is pretty important as well. I have some other skills that increase movement speed, and that's the basics for the stats. And then anything else that really adds close damage or core damage is important. I also have some life regeneration. This is helpful for boss fights where they don't have a lot of adds. But this build mainly focuses on killing groups of monsters pretty fast. Alright, so on to the gear. So starting off, as I mentioned, with this helm, the main thing I wanted was the life on kill. And the stats are important as well, but right now, being that it's so early, I'm kind of just focused on more survivability. And this gives me 15 willpower, which is pretty nice as well, because the healing I receive from a lot of my other skills is increased, as well as some overpower damage. This one has, and I upgraded it with the healing received, crude skull. You gain 0.35% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage. So I deal damage very, very quickly with dagger, so this stacks up pretty quick to 35%. This one, these gloves I have for the critical strike chance, and the nice aspect for flurry, which damages enemies in a circle and deals 12% increased damage, which is nice because flurry usually only goes, and I'll show you a little bit later, just forward in front of the character, so that's really cool. And then for the pants, this is really nice because it gives me a rank of Dark Shroud, which I'm already using, so it helps me max that out. And then I imprinted this aspect where damaging an elite enemy grants a barrier. So when I face these elite enemies, I actually get 315 extra life in a way, basically, as a barrier for 10 seconds. And usually within 10 seconds I can kill all the other ads, so it's rarely getting to my life pool when I fight elites, which is great. Then for the boots, I have the main thing is the critical strike grants movement speed, and being that I have decent amount of critical strike, especially with my Dark Shroud skill, which I'll show in a little bit. It actually gives me, right here it shows 12%, but I actually have 22% because it gives 10% critical strike with my skills. So I crit pretty often, which is awesome. I don't actually use the bow, a lot of people do. I'm trying to go pure melee, so I'm just using this as like extra like a stat stick, as you would say, like we played WoW, for more, you know, core skill damage and dexterity. Dexterity on this character increases skill damage and dodge chance, which helps a bit. This is nice and it synergizes with the barrier. It deals 48% increased damage while you have the barrier active, which is awesome. And as I mentioned, like, this is the barrier that gets granted, and then this is just like a synergy to it. In addition to movement speed, and then 1 to all subterfuge skills, which is awesome as well. I like that bonus on gear that it gives to all skills or certain skills. And then the resistances are nice as well. That's standard on amulets. Ring 11 to life on kill, which is awesome. Plus it restores 3 of my primary resource when you crowd control enemy, and I stun enemies a lot, so they're crowd controlled. So my energy is restored pretty quickly, in addition to the skills that I use. And then basic skills grant 32 attack speed, so more of the my basic skill, invigorating strike, that I use. I could use that more quickly and generate energy more quickly, which means I could use flurry more quickly. And then for my weapons, I try to upgrade them as much as possible to get as much DPS, and I'll eventually have to enchant these. So, like, for example, damage to distant enemies I don't really need because I'm in close quarters. But this one has a Dark Shroud Shadow. Whenever it would be removed. So whenever you get hit, one of your Dark Shroud charges gets used up, and then a bonus is that it deals 88 shadow damage, which is nice. And then this one is not upgraded to legendary because I don't have another aspect to use that I didn't already use for my rogue. And this is just for the all stats and the 226 damage per second. So overall, really, really nice skills here. I mean, yeah, skills on the gear and good aspects that synergize well with the other affixes on the character for this build. So for the skills here, and I'm actually going to, when I first started, I decided to use Invigorating Strike, and I started putting points into that. But at this point, I don't use it all that much because I get a lot of mana regeneration, but I still use it on occasion, so I could actually eventually take one out and just use one skill point for Invigorating Strike. And then going down the list here, as I mentioned, I maxed out Blade Fury, and with the combo point, and I'll show that right now. If you go to Specializations, level 20, you get Inner Sight. Level, I think it's 15. You get combo points, and your basic skills, which would be Invigorating Strike, it says basic, generate combo points, and then they're consumed, as you can see here, with Blade with Fury or any core type skill. So this 3 combo points, it grants damage, 45% bonus, and with my other skills, you can see these modifiers. Each time it damages a crowd controlled or vulnerable enemy, so I stun them. I'm actually healed for 1% of my life, so pretty much 55 per cast, which is awesome. And I can kill a lot of enemies at a time, or hit a lot of enemies at a time, so it generates pretty good. Recovers my life pretty quickly. In addition, evading through an enemy will cause your next flurry to stun enemies, and that's what I'm talking about with a stun. When you evade through them and then use Blade Fury, it's going to stun them, which synergizes with these other skills. Alright, so I don't use Barrage, it was just, you know, because one of my items has it as a skill. Eventually, as I level up, I want to increase this more, where you're kind of life-stealing your enemies. I want to rank this up to 3, and then this actually reduces my close damage that I take, so I want to increase that as well. But for now, I just maxed out Flurry, and as I mentioned before, you got the upgrades here, Enhanced Flurry and then Advanced Flurry, which causes the stun when you evade through. This could also be pretty cool, but I like the stun because it takes away damage that I would have been taking if they weren't stunned. This is just from a skill, I don't really use it too much, Caltrops. And then this is in the subterfuge skill tree area. Dark Shroud is awesome because it gives me damage reduction, and then when you have 2 active, you gain 10% critical strike, which is significant. And that gives me 22% critical strike. And then with this here, Enhanced Dark Shroud, shadows have a 10% chance not to be consumed. So there's always a chance you don't have to recast it when you get hit. Then I decided to go with Shadow Imbuement. So when enemies die, they explode and deal shadow damage to nearby enemies. And you have a 25% increased critical strike chance against injured enemies, which are kind of like ones that are almost dead, less than 35%. So they're pretty much even more dead when they're that low in health. And then the primary explosion makes all the enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds, and they'll take 20% increased damage. So all this is like significant damage for the Shadow Imbuement. And then in addition, shadow damage has a chance to stun, which is another crowd control. And this one is the energy regenerator that's key for me. Each time you kill an enemy with shadow damage, so when they explode and they die from shadow damage, you generate 20 energy, which is huge because you have 100 max. So if you kill 5 enemies, it's instantly refilled, and you can go right back to using Flurry without needing to use Invigorating Strike anymore. I tried Shadow Clone, which is pretty cool, especially against bosses. Your Shadow mimics your actions, and then when you upgrade it, it does 100% of your damage. So it starts with 80 and then 20%. And once you cast it, you become unstoppable. And you can, if you're frozen or if you're impaired by anything, you can easily get through that and then evade out. I don't have enough skill points to do this, but I'm probably going to use Momentum, but I'm going to test them out once the beta is done. Alright, so yeah, I went over my stats, my gear, my skills, and now I'll just show you in action how this build works. So when I'm coming up on a group of monsters, I usually pop Dark Shroud and Shadow Imbuement. Then I use Evasion to go across them. And then I use Flurry. And not only that damages them, but it also stuns them. So they're crowd controlled, they're stunned, and then another Blade Fury is still Shadow imbued because it's 2 charges. And as long as they're Shadow imbued when they're dead, they explode. And each one that's killed with shadow damage instantly restores my energy. So it's instant regen, it's solid AoE for sure. The only challenge is usually single target. I can still kill them pretty easily, but this build is specialized towards AoE. So that's my build. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.